Everyone already knows who Jamie Lannister is. They know the name before they ever meet the man. They know the story they've been told, the single moment that eclipses everything else. They know the word Kingslayer, spoken with the certainty of something settled, something understood. When they look at him, they do not see a lifetime of choices or doubts or consequences. They see a verdict. Jamie learned long ago that correcting them only made things worse. Silence, at least, spared him the effort. He grew up surrounded by expectations that left no room for hesitation. As a Lannister, he was never allowed to be ordinary. From the moment he could walk, he was taught what he represented: wealth, power, legacy. His name carried weight before he had done anything to earn it, and that weight shaped every decision that followed. There was comfort in that clarity. The rules were simple: be strong, be capable, never show weakness. Honor mattered, but only the kind that could be seen and measured. Reputation mattered more. And above all else, skill mattered. The sword became everything. It was the one place where the world made sense. When he fought, there were no questions, no whispers, no expectations beyond the edge of the blade. His body knew what to do even when his mind did not. With a sword in his hand, he felt complete, precise, admired, undeniable. People respected him then, feared him, wanted to be him. The sword gave him a self that could not be questioned. When he swore his oaths, he believed in them, not blindly, but sincerely. To serve, to protect, to obey. He believed honor could coexist with duty, that the world would never force him to choose between them. That was the lie no one ever warned him about. Because the moment came when obedience and honor could not exist together. The choice itself was not dramatic in the way people imagine it. There was no glory in it, no satisfaction, just pressure, fear, and the sickening awareness that doing nothing would mean becoming complicit in something far worse. Jamie acted, and in doing so, he learned a brutal truth, that sometimes the cost of doing what feels right is being hated forever for it. Afterward, there were no questions. No one asked what he saw. No one asked what he prevented. No one wanted to know why. The act itself was enough. The blade, the body, the broken oath. From that day forward, Jamie Lannister was no longer a knight who made a choice. He was a story. And stories do not care about truth. At first, he tried to care. He tried to explain. He tried to hold on to the idea that clarity would come, that reason would matter. When that failed, he learned something else instead. If the world insisted on seeing him as a villain, then he would wear the role openly. Sarcasm became armor. Arrogance became defense. If they were determined to misunderstand him, he would give them something easy to hate. Caring too much had already cost him everything once. He wouldn't let it do so again. War became a refuge of sorts. On the battlefield, reputation mattered less than ability. There, a sword still meant something. There, skill could drown out judgment. Fighting reminded him of who he had been before the name Kingslayer consumed him. Until even that was taken away. Captivity stripped him further than battle ever could. Chained, watched, spoken about as if he were already condemned, he saw himself reduced to the worst version of the stories told about him. He was no longer dangerous because of what he could do, but because of what people believed he was capable of. They did not see a man. They saw a symbol. And symbols are easier to hate than people. Then he lost his hand. Not in a moment of courage or sacrifice. Not in a way that felt meaningful. It was sudden, brutal, and deeply unfair. Pain came first, white, consuming, impossible to ignore. But fear followed close behind, because the pain would fade, the loss would not. Without his sword hand, Jamie felt hollow. The thing that had anchored him to the world was gone. The skill he had built his entire identity around vanished in an instant. He was left with nothing to prove himself with, nothing to hide behind. For the first time, he was forced to exist without the one thing that had always defined him. And he did not know who he was without it. The world did not pause to accommodate his loss. People still expected the same confidence, the same sharpness, the same indifference. But pity crept into their eyes now, and that hurt more than hatred ever had. Hatred, at least, implied strength. Pity implied irrelevance. With nothing to distract him, memory returned. The oaths, the moment, the years spent pretending he didn't care. He realized slowly and unwillingly that indifference had been easier than reflection. That sarcasm had been easier than honesty. That living as a caricature was simpler than confronting the weight of his choices. Without the sword, he had no escape. He began to notice things he had ignored before. How people flinched when they were judged without explanation. How reputation crushed nuance. How easily a single act could erase everything else someone had ever been. He saw himself reflected in others, and for the first time, he didn't look away. Nothing about his past changed. People still whispered. They still used his name like an insult. The story they believed remained intact, untouched by context or doubt. Jamie understood now that it always would. Some truths never surface. Some explanations are never wanted. What changed was quieter. He no longer needed the sword to understand himself. He no longer mistook admiration for worth. He no longer believed that strength alone could carry him through the consequences of his choices. He was not redeemed. He was not absolved. But he was awake. Jamie Lannister continued forward, not because forgiveness awaited him, but because stopping would mean surrendering to a version of himself defined entirely by one moment. And he refused to let that be the end of his story. From his perspective, the world was never simple. It was never clean. It was never fair. It was just a series of choices made under pressure, followed by consequences no one else fully understood. This is what the story feels like from where he stands. Not heroic, not noble, just human and unfinished.